The Honey Trap by Sean Platt. What the hell is this? Liam looked Mira in the eye. She seemed to hiccup from crying. Spam? Her voice quivered. Liam glanced down at the email, changed his tone. The whole point of starting his own story studio after toiling away for 6 long years as a lowly assistant at Apex Talent, one of Hollywood's top agencies, was so he wouldn't have to deal with an abundance of assholes, with the ultimate goal of never becoming one now that he ran his own company. No, Mira, this is definitely not spam. So I'm fired? It was hard to fire someone who worked for free as an intern, though Liam did give her a monthly bonus to help with rent. Because, aside from this slip-up, Mira was great, and he knew full well working for exposure didn't actually get you a goddamn thing. After all, he'd done that bullshit for years. No, you're not fired. It was a simple mistake. Relief washed over her face. He gestured to her desk outside of the glass walls of his small office, and she trotted back, taking her place by the phone. Not that it ever rang. Liam glanced at the email again. Dear creatives, in 2023, A.A. Milne's beloved Winnie-the-Pooh will enter the public domain. To celebrate, Celestial Studios is searching for the most inventive, hilarious, moving, or groundbreaking take on Pooh and the Gang of the 100-Acre Wood. Craft a feature film pitch or screenplay that presents these iconic characters in an eye-opening new light. The winning submission will receive $100,000 and a production deal with Celestial Studios. Existential art house film, adult satire, animation extravaganza, or anything your brilliant mind can conjure. We welcome bold new interpretations of Pooh and Friends. Entries are due on January 31st, 2023. Light your creative spark and be part of film history. Celestially yours, the studio team, January 31st. Jesus, it was the 28th now. If only Mira checked her trash folder more than once every 6 months, because that's when the email got sent, July. Liam supposed he should be grateful she checked it at all. Celestial Studios was absolutely killing it in the industry. All the big studios had their own streamers, and many were suffocating under the weight of it. But Celestial was smart enough to license content, beholden to no one and most often to the highest bidder. Winning this could have been the very thing to save Stardust, because they were in need of saving. He started his own business because he wanted to create a studio which would be a supportive environment for talented yet undiscovered storytellers to create commercially successful narratives for film and TV. His time at Apex had given him a front-row seat to the industry. Liam knew exactly what studios and production companies were asking for, and with the right team of storytellers he could develop those ideas in-house and deliver them right to the buyers. So he scraped together every dime he had and leveraged his contacts, hiring a small team of 5 promising writers, rented some non-embarrassing office space, and launched his story studio. He turned around, eyeing the posters on the back wall. He'd had a poster made up for each script as a way of manifesting their success. And Stardust had truly developed some wonderfully creative IP over the last year. The Human Strain was a sci-fi thriller following a dangerous AI that breached containment. Family Jewels was a raucous comedy about a family diamond that accidentally gets swallowed by the groom at his wedding. And Dog Days of Summer portrayed an epic cross-country road trip told from a wayward golden retriever's point of view. But despite the diligent efforts of their manager, Hannah, none had found a home. Executives seemed scared to run with anything they or their bosses saw as risky. They begged for fresh ideas, but really just wanted stories with franchise potential or were a proven safe bet. The moving target of claimed desire versus actual tolerance for innovation exhausted him. How come he hadn't seen that before? Maybe Liam was too much of an optimist. But now, on the brink of Stardust's inaugural anniversary, his enterprise was drowning in red ink with barely a month of grace in the bank. And now it was time to tell them. He turned from the posters to the room beyond Mira's desk, where his team of writers were batting yet another idea around the table, busy weaving daydreams, blissfully unaware that hungry wolves of financial ruin had arrived. He glanced at Celestial's email again, January 31st. And then he sat. That was still 3 days. There were 6 of them. A series of 10 or 12-hour days would be the equivalent of 6 months. Although given his current financial predicament, he might want to ask Mira to run those numbers and double-check. But surely, given the talent pool, they could make it work. Liam grabbed his laptop and walked to the writer's room. "What's up, boss?" Jessica leaned back in her chair, cropped pink hair tucked under a dark hoodie that swallowed her wiry frame. "We got a last-minute opportunity." Arthur eyed him, brushing a hand through his artfully tousled blonde hair. "How last minute?" 10 days. 10 days, Manda repeated. Liam set the most definitely not spam email on the table. Celestial Studios is hosting a screenwriting contest for the most innovative takes on Winnie-the-Pooh. Jessica scrunched her nose. Winnie-the-Pooh? Some kiddie character from last century? How is that at all relevant? Liam wasn't about to tell her how very relevant Winnie was to them. "Characters," Liam corrected her. "We get access to the entire 100-acre wood, and it doesn't need to be a kiddie take. In fact, it shouldn't be if we expect to stand out." Manda crossed her arms. A sassy graphic tee and thrashed jeans contrasted with her elegantly styled auburn hair. "You want us to pitch a Winnie-the-Pooh slasher film? That sounds like a terrible idea." "It doesn't have to be a slasher film." Liam's smile grew heavier. "We can pitch whatever idea we want, using those characters. So think about the stories we already like to tell and... Not Tigger, though." Wren's eyes radiated a warm intelligence behind the black horn-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. "Tigger wasn't in the first Winnie-the-Pooh book, so he won't have entered the public domain." "Why not?" Jessica shrugged. "I like a challenge. When's this script due?" Liam grimaced. 3 days. They all stared at him. "What?" They all said with what sounded like audible choreography. "The invitation got lost in spam," Liam explained. Wren laughed. "That's not lost so much as derailed to another dimension before finding its way back." "Look," Liam said. "Our collective, collaborative brainpower can get this done. Are you really saying that you don't think you have it in you to reimagine an iconographic character?" There was a moment of silence. Nothing like telling creatives you question their ability to hack a story. "What if we write an R-rated comedy where Pooh and Piglet accidentally nom-nom on psychedelic honey and go on some sort of nutty drug-fueled adventure through the 100-acre wood?" Jessica asked. Liam grinned. "Meh," Wren said. "A dystopian thriller where Pooh leads a violent uprising against a totalitarian President Christopher Robin who's outlawed honey." Jessica tried again. Wren shook his head. "Winnie-the-Pooh comes loaded with childhood nostalgia. Mess with that magic and we risk pissing off the public. Can you imagine the uproar if someone really tried making a slasher film starring Pooh and Piglet?" "There'd be no uproar." Arthur shook his head. "And it would probably be called Blood and Honey or some such shit." "I like that." Jessica nodded in approval. "How about Eeyore as a grizzled and foul-mouthed alcoholic anti-hero who enlists the 100-acre gang to help him on a heist, stealing a secret stash of honey liquor?" Manda laughed. "All right, this is going to be fun. I mean, not Jessica's ideas, because obviously, but there is something here." Jessica glared at her. "No offense," Manda said. "Offense definitely taken," Jessica said. "How about a revisionist history epic reframing Pooh as a cult leader sparking religious wars across medieval Europe over pagan honey rituals?" Wren studied her. "You do know that Winnie-the-Pooh is not about honey, right?" Jessica rolled her eyes. "That gluttonous motherfucker talks about honey incessantly. He sticks his head in every beehive he passes, keeps jars of that sweet nectar stashed everywhere, including on his nightstand. You think he's eating all that shit? Because I'm pretty sure he's using that honey for you know what?" "This is exactly what I was talking about," Wren interrupted her. "Messing with nostalgia. And just for the record, Winnie-the-Pooh doesn't have any junk to you know what with." "Sure he does." Arthur took a long swallow of water. "It's just under all the fur, but once Pooh gets a boner..." "Winnie-the-Pooh doesn't get boners," Wren declared. "Do you have any ideas that don't involve honey?" Manda asked. "Fine. How about this?" She leaned forward. The 100-acre wood is a barren wasteland without a drop of honey. A recent fire has left the woodland creatures bloodthirsty and carnivorous after prolonged starvation. Christopher Robin is a neglected orphan whose parents were murdered, wandering through the charred forest after escaping the nearby orphanage. Kanga and Piglet are especially ready to fuck some shit up. The 100-acre gang teams up to attack Christopher Robin, killing him like 6 times if you account for all the torture, before using his scattered remains to fertilize the soil so that fresh flowers can bloom and lure new innocents into the ravenous wood to meet similarly grisly fates, until all 100 acres have been transformed into a sprawling graveyard. Jesus, Manda said. Sorry I asked. It's not really 100 acres, Wren growled. Are we seriously doing this? Arthur asked Liam. Liam nodded. We are. So take 15 minutes, then come back in here and start pitching me ideas. Or we could take an hour, Arthur said, and actually think about our stories. Nope, Liam said. No need to overthink, and we're working on a tight deadline. How about a Tarantino-esque tale where Pooh goes on a violent rampage after Christopher Robin replaces his honey with sugar-free syrup? Organs get ripped out, stuffed with honey and sewn back in. That 100k is already ours. Liam blinked. Take half an hour. Then he looked at Jessica. Come back with your best ideas. 25 minutes later, the group was gathered around the conference table once more. I'll go first, Jessica said. It should be Liam, Wren said. He got us into the mess. He should be the one to start off transforming Winnie-the-Pooh into box office honey. Liam nodded and got to his feet. We open on a behind-the-scenes view of the 100-acre wood set, a soundstage rigged with hidden cameras and mics. Crews of puppeteers secretly control the stuffed characters, making Pooh waddle awkwardly, Eeyore's tail drag, Piglet nervously twitch, whatever. To little Christopher Robin, it all appears magical. The animals in his imaginative world can talk and move. So the poor kid has been manipulated since birth into believing his toys have come to life to be his friends? Wren narrowed his eyes at Liam. It's the Pooh Man show, he explained. Wren didn't even blink. Liam raised his brows. Like the Truman Show with Winnie-the-Pooh. Oh, I get it, Wren assured him. I just think it's fucked up. Most movies are fucked up if you think about it, Jessica said. Most movie characters aren't sacred for people. Are one of those people named Wren? Manda asked. One of them, for sure. Arthur nodded. Yes, it's fucked up, Liam continued. But that's the point. Christopher Robin is trapped as the unwitting star in a deranged spectacle staged by vaguely sinister producers, making billions exploiting his innocence for our entertainment, all while preventing him from discovering the real world outside or making any human connections not scripted into this fantasy landscape. It's a public domain take on the unsettling amount of voyeurism in our modern reality. I think we need a concept with mainstream appeal, Arthur argued. Great, Liam gave him a nod. What have you got? How about the murder of Christopher Robin? Arthur tented his fingers and leaned forward. A moody, Agatha Christie-style mystery about an older Christopher Robin who returns to the wood, only to wind up murdered. I would have never guessed from the title, Manda said. Does one of the stuffed little assholes kill him? Asked Mira. Everyone turned to look at her. She had slipped into the room and was sitting in the corner listening. She glanced at Liam. I'm sorry I feel like it's my fault we're in this situation. Do you want me to leave? The others looked at her curiously. Liam shook his head. Number stay. She smiled. Liam turned back to Arthur. There might be something there. Are you seeing Winnie-the-Pooh as the good guy in this? Not necessarily. Arthur shrugged. I figure Christopher visits the wood for the first time since childhood, only to find his beloved childhood buddies all congealed into bitter versions of their former selves, like Winnie's a slovenly shut-in who guzzles bottles of golden honey liqueur to numb the pain of abandonment. Fuck yeah? Jessica nodded in approval. Manda wrinkled her nose. We need less murder and more character complexity. Or a more interesting setting, suggested Mira. This is Winnie-the-Pooh, Wren said. There is only one setting. No, no, Liam said. What have you got? She blinked. Me? Yeah, Liam said. After all, we're in this together. What about a dystopian film where authoritarian aliens conquer Earth by trapping humans' consciousnesses inside a Winnie-the-Pooh virtual simulation? No one said anything. She continued, getting more enthused. A totalitarian regime trying to quell resistance imprints dissident minds into Winnie-the-Pooh avatars so that AI Sentinel programs can discipline them through repetitive days spent stuck in the 100-acre wood. But a glitch allows Pooh and Piglet to remember that they were once human, thus inspiring a revolution both inside and out of the simulation. We could call it Now We Are Pooh. Did you just turn the 100-acre wood into a virtual gitmo? Ren said. Yeah, they were stupid, Mira said. No idea is stupid, Liam said. Those might not work, but it doesn't mean they won't spark something that does work. Mira gave him a grateful smile. I don't think a totalitarian torture simulation aligns with Pooh's core values, Ren said. Pooh is entering the public domain, Jessica said, which means we can play with his core values all we want. Rena formed a fist and hit the table. That's not how it works. You can change the premise and settings all you want, but the minute we change what Winnie-the-Pooh stands for, then it's no longer Winnie-the-Pooh. Liam sat, folding his arms across his chest. All right, Ren. Tell us what you're thinking. What about a story called Blustery Day? An emotional drama depicting our beloved characters trapped together in a storm shelter during a tornado, where their personality clashes bubble up to the surface. Again with the beloved characters, Jessica said. Did you actually read the email from Celestial Studios? Ren said, grabbing the paper and waving it in the air. If they refer to the characters as beloved, then maybe we should pay attention to their positioning. He turned to Liam. Don't you agree? I agree, we all want that 100 grand. So yes, that's a word worth paying attention to. But I'm not sure a forced proximity story is what we're looking for here. Liam turned to Manda. What's brewing in your brilliant mind? The basement at Pooh Corner? Nice title. He nodded. Tell us more. A responsibility-shirking millennial finds himself doomed to eternally re-experience one chaotic day as Winnie-Pooh. How does that work? Jessica asked. Maybe with a glitch that lets them remember he used to be human, Manda said. That doesn't even make sense, Mira muttered. They all looked at her. She sank further into her chair. Does this responsibility-shirking millennial actually turn into Pooh? Liam asked. He doesn't actually turn into a bear or anything, but the main character, let's say his name is Jack. Of course his name is Jack. Arthur rolled his eyes. Every male character in Hollywood has that name. And Jack gets increasingly unhinged throughout the story. Maybe start seeing people as heffalumps and woozles. The specifics don't matter. It's a Pooh Bear-inspired time loop comedy, where the main character relives the same day on repeat until he finally gains the maturity to leave his childhood behind. Ren shook his head. There is nothing Winnie-the-Pooh about that premise. That could just as easily be about the Care Bears. Fuck the Care Bears in their fur holes, Jessica said. Liam eyed her. You seem to think a lot about stuffed bears fucking. She stuck out her tongue. A full hour might have helped that last idea, Arthur said. Jessica, Liam said. A straight-up horror take, but not stupid. Jessica rubbed her hands together. 6 is psychological horror. Christopher Robin is super fucked up and harbouring all 6 of the Pooh Bear archetypes in his head. We don't get Tigger, Ren reminded her. So the fuck what? Jessica said. So 6 is a specific number. Kanga and Roo are sick of being grouped as a unit. Do you want to hear the pitch or not? Liam nodded. We want to hear the pitch. Jessica continued. A detective is investigating a string of macabre Pooh-themed murders. So 7 with Winnie-the-Pooh? Liam asked. Exactly. Jessica spread her hands wide. Everyone looked at Ren. I don't actually hate it, he said. Oh my God, you're actually coming around. Jessica grinned. Ren glared at her. It's too dark. Liam shook his head. We can do better. Arthur crossed his arms. A psychological thriller deconstructing Pooh as embodying trauma lacks mainstream appeal. We need a concept embracing the spirit that made the Winnie-the-Pooh characters so beloved in the first place. Or we could say, fuck all that beloved shit and go full cannibal. I assume you like working here? Liam looked at Jessica. Because we need to win this. Why? She asked. Fuck. Liam hadn't meant to let that slip. Pride. Don't you want to prove we're the best group of creative minds in the business? Fuck yeah. He noticed Manda studying him. Averted his eyes. How about a story where the 100-acre gang needs to win some sort of contest to save the wood? Manda said. Liam grimaced. That hit a little too close to him, but he tried to keep his eyes steady. Manda was still watching him. Can Christopher Robin tell his friends about the looming disaster at the last possible moment? Arthur asked. That is the most dramatic way to arrange things, said Wren. Too cliché, Liam said, hoping to change the subject. What else do you all got? Once again, you're all overthinking this. Jessica eyed the room in accusation. I say we slap a fresh coat of gore on the characters and call it a day. Modern audiences will eat that shit up. You clearly have no respect for modern audiences, Arthur replied. You're right, Jessica agreed. But it's not their fault after being force-fed recycled drivel for so long that their taste buds have numbed. Eat enough McDonald's and that shit tastes good. This contest sounds like a chance to wake the audience back up with something daring. So why not use a familiar framework they already love? Isn't that better than whipping up another boring bowl of room-temperature story porridge? As long the story porridge wins us the contest, Liam said. Perhaps we should ask ourselves what each of us thinks a modern Winnie-the-Pooh story should bring to the table, Manda suggested. Arthur spread his hands wide. I would like us to develop a sophisticated mystery that proves these classic characters have dimensions beyond innocence once we peel back the layers. Jessica leaned back in her chair. I vote for an edgy new lens exposing real darkness, plaguing the wood that connects with mature audiences. Manda shook her head. Honest humour that acknowledges growing up warps childhood magic without completely puncturing the whimsical bubble. Then Wren. An uplifting message about sustaining inner light even as external realities shift in disheartening ways. How about you, Mira? She pointed to herself. Wren nodded. Imaginative escapism to transport viewers into a place they've never been before, with characters that feel familiar enough to make them feel safe on the ride. Then they all turned to Liam. How about you, boss? Jessica asked. I think we want to bridge generational innocence with edgy storytelling that respects where the characters came from, but isn't afraid to take them someplace new. So how do we get there? Arthur asked. We just need to start. Liam walked over to a cabinet in the corner and grabbed a stack of index cards. Then he dumped the oranges out of the bowl on the sideboard and carried it back to the table where he distributed the cards. Instead of waiting to find a great idea, we're going to do the hard work of choosing an idea and making it great. So write your best pitch on an index card and drop it into that bowl. After a tense stretch of collective scribbling for a solid 60 seconds, the storytellers folded their cards and cast their pitches into Liam's makeshift ballot bowl. After a vigorous shake, Liam held the bowl out to Mira. Pull a card. She did, passing it to him. He read the selection with a tentative smile. The murder of Christopher Robin, it is. Booyah, Arthur said. After settling on murder, Liam ordered in lunch on Stardust's dime. An hour later, the writer's room table was filled with cartons of takeout from Wok and Roll as they all got ready to get their story bouncing like the Tigger they weren't allowed to use. Arthur swallowed a hunk of orange chicken and cleared his throat. To craft a noir Winnie-the-Pooh, we'll need to build empathy for an older version of Christopher Robin first. This is fucking surreal. Manda shook her head. I remember watching Pooh Corner as a kid while cuddling my stuffed animals. Now we're plotting his plunge into hard-boiled darkness. Don't tell us you're turning Wren, Jessica said. Manda glowered at her. Arthur ignored both of them and finished his thought. Christopher Robin's reasons for returning to the wood need to feel grounded. Agreed. Wren gestured with a chopstick. Maybe tragedy lured him back to the forest. Whatever we decide, there needs to be emotional weight behind his return. And a reason for him to start digging at the truth, Arthur added. And what is the truth? Liam asked. Arthur shook his head. We don't know yet. What if we make Christopher Robin an asshole? Jessica spoke through a mouthful of noodles. Like some privileged gentrifier wanting to fill the wood with condos. Maybe Christopher gets drawn back to the wood by some repressed childhood memories. Wren looked around for approval. But Jessica rolled her eyes. Please, no hackneyed amnesia tropes. Wren tried again. We need emotional stakes rooted in authentic relationships. Arthur nodded. I agree with that. The higher the personal stakes, the more satisfying the payoff. Jessica jumped in next, followed by Manda, and then Arthur again. And once the conversation got going, it never really stopped. Soon enough, all the noodles were gone, and their table was littered with fortunes. They'd made good work today. Tomorrow would be even better. There was nothing more exhilarating than breaking story. Liam knew the building blocks often started off rough, but soon enough they would be polished and gleaming. Shall I order dinner? Liam asked. Arthur shook his head, stretching his arms. I've got a date tonight, but I could go another hour. Jessica stared at him. Since when? Arthur grinned. Met her a couple of days ago. And she agreed to date you? Shut up. Manda's gaze was still fixed on her screen, same as it had been for hours, despite her regularly chiming into the discourse with ideas, half of which were absurdly good. Even if they were no closer to plotting the murder of Christopher Robin. If we order Mexican, I'll totally stay. Tambien. Mira raised her hand. Liam glanced at her. She lowered her hand. If I'm invited. You're invited, Liam said. And order like a loaf of guacamole, Jessica added. I'm in, nodded Wren. Manda nodded. You want us to chip in? Liam hesitated, then shook his head. I've got this. Thanks, she said with a nod after a lingering beat. Mira, can you order? Liam asked. Mira nodded, pulling her phone and walking back to her desk. She stayed on her computer while waiting for the food to arrive. The others all stretched or visited the restroom. When they gathered back at the table, she held up her hand. I've been scouring social for potential competition. There's definitely buzz about the contest, with a few big names throwing their hats in the ring. Did you expect us to be going up against amateurs? Jessica asked. No. Mira shook her head. But I didn't expect Yeet Grinder. Seriously? Wren raised his eyebrows. Why do they give a shit about $100,000? They want the prestige of winning, Liam said. Who else should we be worried about? I would say that subjective truth is our main competition, said Jessica, looking over Manda's shoulder. Smart artsy films. Manda agreed with a nod. Pretentious, scoffed Wren. They might always aim for brilliance, but subjective truth movies always equate to boredom for me. For you, Liam said. Critics love them. Only because they're afraid not to, Wren snorted. Manda kept reading. Yeet Grinder's storytelling style is gonzo and tropey, but genre fans love that shit. They're growing fast with 3 features in 2 years. Big hits on Paramount Plus and one of the top 10 shows on Netflix last year. Jessica made a face. Even if few people will openly admit to watching those shows. I loved Once Upon a Time in Transylvania, Mira said. No one said anything. Who else? Liam asked. She met his eyes. Critical Velocity. Fuck. All the air left Liam's body. Yeah. Why? Wren wanted to know. Critical Velocity has more money than most countries and could not give any less of a shit about prestige. That one is all about the merch and associated spin-offs, Jessica said. Critical Velocity isn't just a studio, it's a transmedia juggernaut. Their focus isn't on storytelling, it's on content. The kind they can splatter across every medium. For them, story is just a means to an end for merch, and this contest with Celestial is at the best a massive boost to their bottom line if they win and the franchise takes. But even in a worst-case scenario, they'll benefit from the exposure of their idea being one of the finalists. And they keep other creatives from entering the market, Liam said, occupying the space so no one else can. Fuckers, Mira said. They all looked at her. She ducked her head. Sorry. That's some fierce competition, Manda said. Agreed. Liam nodded. So Stardust will have to be fiercer. 3 hours later, Liam turned off the lights in the office and headed down the stairs to the car park. The elevator shut off at 6 and it was now almost midnight. The others had cleared out 20 minutes earlier, except for Arthur, who had left for his date. Liam was surprised to see Manda still in the parking lot. He walked over to her. Car troubles? Nah. She shook her head. I wanted to talk to you. He tensed. You're not quitting, are you? Are you kidding? Do you know how many shit jobs I had to work before you paid me to write? I'm going nowhere. Then, but Stardust might be. Why didn't you tell us we're going under? Liam opened his mouth to lie, then slumped against his car. What was the point? If they didn't win this competition, they were all going to find out anyway. He shrugged. I'm in the business of making your dreams come true. What kind of leader am I if I can't do that for my own? Manda nudged him. You forget we're in this together? You don't have to carry it alone. You really should have told us. He nodded. I was scared you'd all run. Not me. And them. If they do, fuck 'em. Liam laughed. Thanks, Manda. She patted his arm. You're not in this alone. We'll win that competition, and everything will work out. He smiled, appreciating her faith. Then he watched her get into her car and drive off. And for the first time in days, Liam felt like he could breathe. Liam had been pacing for a while by the time everyone arrived at the office come morning. Except for Arthur, and he wasn't about to tell his team the bad news twice. It was going to be hard enough the first time. Manda leaned over and squeezed his arm. He looked at her gratefully. Jessica caught the gesture and eyed them. He flushed and ignored her. Because Arthur came swaggering into the writer's room, wearing a grin that seemed even smugger than his walk. Someone got laid last night. Jessica didn't even look up from her laptop, still staring at the screen, clearly preoccupied with something. Best night of my life. He grinned even wider. And we didn't even have sex. You are a sad man, Ren said. If you didn't fuck, then what did you do? We talked all night. Manda raised her brows. You? What the hell did you talk about? Jessica asked. All you ever talk about is story. Exactly, Arthur said. We talked about Winnie-the-Pooh. Liam felt his heart sink. What? You bored your date with work shit? Jessica asked. Is that why you didn't fuck? She fell asleep. People find my work shit interesting, Jessica, and Alison was the one asking all the questions. Ren laughed. Maybe she was trying to keep you distracted so you wouldn't fuck her. Wait a minute, Liam said. Sounds like it worked, Jessica said, talking over him. She was asking questions because her ex works for Yeet Grinder. When I told her about the contest and our concept, she loved the idea of sabotaging that dick face. Alison used to brainstorm with him all the time. She was great at it, so we had... Stop! Liam smacked his palms against the table. The room went quiet. Liam narrowed his eyes. You shared confidential information about our pitch to someone outside the studio? It wasn't like that, Arthur said. Then what was it like, Arthur? Arthur looked from Liam to the others as though looking for an escape route. When he didn't answer Liam, Manda threw her arms up. You blabbed about our idea to an ex-girlfriend of the competition. Exactly. Arthur threw his arms up too. Ex-girlfriend, she's helping us. We don't need her help, Arthur. Liam first named him twice in a row to show his agitation. Jesus. I'm sorry. Arthur only sounded like he half meant it. I didn't think it was a big deal. She gave me some good ideas last night. Well, we're not using any of them. Liam shook his head. Because you should not have been talking about our ideas outside the studio. Manda pulled out her phone and typed. Fuck. What? Arthur asked. Looks like your little conversation with Alison made an impression over at Yeet Grinder. They just tweeted that they're pitching The Murder of Christopher Robin, a Chinatown-style noir mystery. Everyone turned and glared at Arthur. That can't be... It has to... You handed our idea right over to them, Manda said. It's our name, not our idea, Arthur said. You're right. Wren nodded. Their idea is better. How do you know that? Arthur asked. Because Chinatown beats Agatha Christie, Wren said. Says who? Arthur threw his hands wide. Anyone with an ounce of taste or edge or balls, Jessica said. Wren, modern culture. Manda, the Academy Awards, the box office, and basically all of cinematic history. Mira, says the entire 1970s American New Wave film movement. Jesus, Arthur. Liam ran a hand down his face. What difference does it make anyway? Arthur asked. Other companies are talking about their pitches on Twitter. Sure, Liam nodded. But you're leaking details, not log lines. So? So unless we win this fucking money, Stardust will be bankrupt within the month, Liam said. And motherfucker, it was finally out. What? Arthur said. Jessica blinked. That's the reason you're so focused on this? Liam nodded. Yes. And you're just telling us now? Jessica got to her feet. I've got rent next month. If you go under, I lose my goddamned home. That's why we're going to win this competition, Liam said. It's a shot in the dark, Jessica argued. It's all I've got. I need fresh air. Jessica walked out. Wren followed her a moment later. Mira burst into tears. This is all my fault. I should have checked spam. Manda got up and gave her a hug. Arthur still hadn't moved. Liam retreated to his office. He walked in, looking at the posters on his wall. Why had he spent money on them? What a stupid thing to do. As though that $63 would remotely help with the rent. He heard someone in the doorway. Turned around and saw Manda. I fucked that up, didn't I? You could have been a little less blunt, she said, collapsing into the chair opposite his desk. But at least it's out in the open, and Arthur gets the gold star for being an idiot. Not that it was ever in doubt. Liam gave her a half laugh. You think Jessica and Wren are coming back? Probably. Jessica left her purse. He eyed her. How are you so calm about all of this? I'm not. And you should probably know I got an email from Critical Velocity this morning. Well, an email followed by a call. About what? You. Liam blinked. Me? She nodded. They know Stardust is on the brink of bankruptcy. How? She shrugged. They're not stupid. They smell blood in the water. And, because of course there was more, they offered me a job. Shit, Liam paled. Yeah. So, Liam, I need to know you're committed to this because as much as I have faith, I also have bills. I'm sorry that I wasn't exactly forthcoming about how dire our situation. Forget that. But I need to know you're committed. He looked at her. Of course I'm committed. Manda smiled. Then let's make some story magic. Liam blinked his eyes. He would not cry. Thanks. A door slammed. Jessica entered the room alongside Wren. Liam made his way back to the writer's room with Manda at his heels. Arthur still hadn't moved from his seat. Still pale. You're back, Liam said. Is it to stay? Wren nodded. Jessica took a breath, then sat. We still have a lot of childhood sanctity to brutalise before lunch. Liam smiled. What about going back to Manda's time loop idea? Wren said. The basement at Pooh Corner? Mira replied, consulting her notes. Wren nodded. I say we refine that idea into something about arrested development and moving on from childhood. It already was about arrested development and moving on from childhood. But Manda was smiling. Agreed, Liam said. And as someone wise said, let's make some story magic. Liam stared at his blinking cursor, willing the perfect words to flow from his fingers. But after hours of valiant effort from the Stardust team, the basement at Pooh Corner still felt flatter than any of them wanted it to be. Their concept had plenty of promise, but the more they prodded at the idea, the more it leaked. Desperation never did creativity any favours. Another yawn from Ren and Liam knew it was time to call it a night. I appreciate everyone's effort and ideas, but we should all get some rest. We can tackle this again tomorrow with fresh eyes. Manda and Mira left together, while Ren followed. Jessica lingered behind, squeezing his shoulder and leaving it with a clap. Get some rest. Things will look brighter tomorrow. They always do. Will they? Liam raised an eyebrow. This concept still feels flat, like we're forcing these characters into unfamiliar territory. We are. Jessica nodded. But it feels like doing that is squeezing the magic right out of them. Because it is. Maybe we just need to come at it from a different angle. Find some heart hiding under all the fluff. That's what Ren has been saying. I know. Maybe it's time we listen to him. Simplify the concept instead of forcing innovation for innovation's sake. Yeah. Uncover the spiritual center of the story first. Get to the root of what makes Winnie-the-Pooh nostalgic instead of asking Eeyore to twerk. Liam eyed her. Who are you and what did you do to Jessica? She laughed. Good night, boss. We'll knock the stuffing out of this story tomorrow. You just need some sleep first. Jessica was right, but Liam also needed perspective, and maybe a drink. He glanced at Arthur. Listen. His voice cracked. Liam squeezed his shoulder. I know. Get some sleep, and I'll see you in the morning. Arthur ducked his head and walked out. And Liam got into his car and drove 6 blocks to a dingy dive bar tucked down a narrow alley. The flickering sign had so many missing letters that its name was illegible. He opened the door with a weary sigh, looking inside to an aged oak bar gleaming under dusty track lighting, barely illuminating either the place or the patrons who lingered in shadowy booths. Johnny Cash crooned from the vintage jukebox in the corner. Liam slumped atop a lopsided stool and exhaled, hoping he wasn't releasing his dreams in that same breath. Rough night. The bartender was an older woman with teased blonde hair piled high atop her head and a murder of crow's feet nested around her eyes, but her voice carried genuine warmth as she slid a coaster his way. That obvious? Liam tried for a weary smile. We get your type in now and then. What type is that? Though maybe he didn't want to know. Creative souls whose wells have run dry. Lay it on me. Sometimes an outside ear can shake the inspiration loose. She glanced at the barracks of bottles behind her. What can I get you? How about a whiskey? Liam shook his head. I'm not much of a whiskey guy. Maybe that's the problem. He smiled. Guess I'll be a whiskey guy tonight. She nodded. 2 fingers for the tortured artiste coming right up. I'm the opposite of an artiste. I want to actually make money from my stories. I've listened to plenty of pitches between paws. She set his whiskey down in front of him. Go ahead. Give me what you got. Liam studied her kind eyes. How was this any different than what Arthur had done? He avoided details but narrated the entire saga of Stardust Studio, from his optimistic launch to the series of frustrating flounders, staff doubts and dwindling coffers. So tomorrow is Judgment Day on your livelihood? Liam nodded. It's as if we can't whip our story into shape. I'll have to shutter Stardust doors for good. The bartender pursed her lips. Ever consider the trouble isn't with your concepts, but forcing beloved characters against incompatible backdrops? Liam cocked his head, waiting for more. The bartender shrugged. From what I gather, all your ideas aim too cynical or cavalier, turning innocence adversarial for innovation's sake alone. Your writers may understand darkness, but have they truly captured any light? The spirit of Pooh Bear blooms from inquisitive imagination, a sense of childlike wonder, not deconstructive ideations. The bartender knew her shit. Liam would love to see this woman going toe-to-toe with Arthur. Her truth hit him like a punch in the stomach. In their quest to deliver something bold and new, they had lost sight of the primal magic that made Winnie-the-Pooh so timeless. Wren was goddamn visionary. He nodded, both to the bartender and to himself. You're right, we were so focused on delivering our bold reimagining that we missed the core of why audiences love Pooh. His world represents childhood wonder. Those fleeting days when life still overflowed with whimsy and friendships were everything. Well, there you have it, she winked. The heart should guide your creative journey instead of gimmicky detours chasing acclaim. Sometimes the mind is too smart for its own good. Liam took a sip of whiskey and coughed. I really can't thank you enough. That's just the whiskey talking. But I only had 2 sips, Liam said. The bartender shrugged. That's all it takes since whiskey likes to shout. I'm Liam. He extended his hand. Nice to meet you. She shook it and let go. You're not going to tell me your name? She smiled with a shake of her head. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. He smiled back. It's Winnie. Liam stared at her. No fucking way. I told you wouldn't believe me. Your parents actually named you after Winnie-the-Pooh. My parents lost their sense of humour long before I was born. They named me after my grandmother, Winifred, and that woman drank whiskey for breakfast. I'm tempted to ask if you've got a secret portal to the 100-acre wood out back, but I'll just thank you for seeing me out of this rabbit hole and promise honey liquors on me if we ever meet again after midnight. I'll stick with whiskey, Winnie said with a smile. Thanks, Liam said and proved his gratitude with a generous tip he couldn't afford. Then he headed back to the car. He circled the block a few times, inhaling the crisp air as his swirling thoughts settled under the streetlights before driving home. Unlike last night, Liam slept peacefully, no longer feeling the weight of forcing the basement at Pooh Corner. They could step back from misguided efforts to reinvent the 100-acre wood and instead create something organically aligned with the spirit of Pooh. Morning would bring them a last chance to win this thing. We'll never winnow. Jessica waved her phone at Liam as he entered the studio. What now? Liam was on full alert. Haven't you seen? She shoved the phone in his face again. Obviously not. Can you tell me? Liam had been the last of them to arrive, and now everyone was looking at him, awaiting his response to whatever this was. According to Lot Gossip, Subjective Truth's entry is a gritty philosophical western called The Back 100, Jessica exclaimed. And, Liam pressed for more, apparently they have a mind-blowing take. And? Liam repeated. You're acting like the winner got announced already. It might as well have been. Those artsy shitbags at Subjective Truth will pander just enough pseudo-intellectual drivel to snag the prize. If we disregard her judgmental take, I agree with Jessica's concern, said Wren. Liam skimmed the post as his team looked dejected. Anything with a whiff of humour is supposedly out, Arthur grumbled. So the basement at Pooh Corner is as dead. So are we, Mira sighed. Far from it. Liam shook his head. We can still win this thing. How? Jessica threw her hands up in exasperation. You read the article. It sounds like the judges are clearly looking for cigar-chomping nihilism more than wonder or whimsy. She's right. Wren sounded almost resigned. We can't compete with highbrow subversion. You're all missing the point here, Liam said. This was never about winning some arbitrary contest. It's about the creative camaraderie we discovered together, about the way we can collaborate our way through anything. And if we don't win, Stardust is dead, Arthur replied. Yeah, but win or lose, we're going to do this as a team, Liam continued. Arthur, your brilliant attention to detail and gift for intrigue binds our stories with insights that captivate imaginations. Jessica, your bold instincts for subversion force complacency to crumble and make space for innovation to bloom. Wren, your talent for infusing heart into high concept elevates escapism into emotional transportation that uplifts our spirits. Manda, your mastery of structure and voice helps to shape our ideas into resonating stories that will stay with audiences long after the credits roll. And Mira, check your damn spam folder. They all laughed. Jessica nodded. That's all great, boss, but none of those compliments is paying the bills. We at Stardust Studios play the long game. Liam felt the words on a cellular level as he said them. That means if we hang on long enough, we will win. If it's not this contest that gets us to the next phase, then it will be something else. And the bills? Jessica asked. We'll get paid if I have to get a job at 7-Eleven, Liam said. The storytellers glanced at one another. So what's next? Arthur asked. We're going to show the judges what we're made of, with an original Stardust story that embraces our creative strengths, something fresh that radiates magic without the crutch of classic iconography. Liam extended his palm. Jessica slapped hers atop it and got the stack started. Manda, Ren, Mira and Arthur all followed. All for one, Liam proposed. And one for all, his fellowship resounded. We can all tell that you already have an idea, said Jessica with nod. So spill it. What are you thinking? Liam grinned. I'm thinking about an intergenerational family comedy where a cynical millennial suddenly starts having vivid dreams about the 100-Acre Wood characters, and those dreams help him reconnect with his estranged father. The team leaned in, intrigued. Liam continued. Maybe the son is a struggling screenwriter who just lost his job, forcing him to crash with Dad. A curmudgeonly retiree who never supported his creative career. Arguments bubble as they're forced to cohabitate. But at night, the magical dreams transport our writer into Pooh's world, where hilarity ensues during misadventures with the silly old bear and his friends. The whimsical wisdom he collects starts mending fences with Dad, added Ren with an encouraging nod. Enthusiastic murmurs all around. Arthur added, we can parallel the writer's arc with whichever Pooh storylines he dreams through each night. Liam glanced at Mira. Start recording. She nodded and opened up the voice app, and the ideas flowed, takeout cartons piled up as imagination took flight. Then it was dinner, with the midnight deadline looming. They divided acts and scenes between them, never working better or faster, and 2 hours before the bell tolled, Stardust had a tale that every storyteller in the studio agreed upon. One problem, Manda said as Mira typed up. Fade out. Liam laughed. Not a single surviving member of the 100-Acre Wood? Yep, it's not a Pooh story if Pooh, Kanga, Roo, Tigger... Not Tigger, Ren said. Aren't in it. I know, Liam said, but this here is some of our best work ever. Ren shook his head. We can't submit this to the contest. Arthur yawned. It's not too late to make it about Winnie. No, everyone cut him off. I love what we have, Liam said. This story sings because it came from the heart. Why undermine that raw magic now by cramming the story with obligatory IP? Because that's what the point of this contest is, Jessica answered. Then we don't submit. Liam shook his head. We take this script wide instead. What do you all think? Manda? Agreed, she nodded. Liam adjusted his collar, and then his hair. Manda swatted his hand aside. Stop fussing. You're right. He sat back in his chair, listening to the sounds of water glasses clinking around him. He'd never eaten at Errol's before. Too pricey. But he wasn't picking up the tab today. He spotted Celine from across the room, nudged Manda. They both stood. She smiled and walked over to them. Liam, Manda. They both nodded. She held out a hand. They shook. Nice to meet you both. Then they all sat. How's the contest coming? Manda asked. God. Celine picked up her water glass and taking a sip. If I never hear the names Winnie or goddamn Pooh again, I'll be over the moon and back again. The whole contest was a bust. Manda blinked. There's no winner. No. She shook her head. Every single goddamn entry involved Tigger. You know he's not in the public fucking domain yet. Liam blinked. We heard that. Must say I was surprised not to see an entry from Stardust. Seemed like it would be right up your alley. Liam nodded. We considered it, but... He grimaced. We were approaching it from desperation, and that didn't seem like the right energy for any project with our name on it. If we work with Celestial, we want to give you our best, even if it doesn't fit what you were looking for right now. There's always tomorrow, and relationships are forever. She eyed him, then pulled their script out. How very honest of you. How about you? Liam nodded at the screenplay. Care to be honest about that? You're right, Celine said. It wasn't what Celestial was looking for. His heart sunk. But sometimes Hollywood is like real life. It might not be we wanted, but it is most definitely what we needed. Shall we discuss how to get this film made? Liam and Manda traded a glance. It's all right to celebrate, Celine assured them with a smile. Liam grabbed his glass. To Winnie. Celine laughed, and they all clinked glasses.